You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. And today is the first formal day of spring. Well, it was a few days ago, but we are now actually, hallelujah, in spring. Not almost in or on the cusp of, but really in spring. And we can feel it in the air. It's just lovely. And we have a celebratory guest today. We have Rana Abdelhamid. She was born May 6, 1993. She's quite young. She's an American activist based in Queens, New York. And she's of Egyptian descent. And she grew up in New York with 3 siblings. As a child, she studied karate. She holds a black belt in Shotokan karate, and as a student, she taught young girls karate to combat race-based violence. She attended Middlebury College as a Posse Foundation scholar, where she earned a BA in international politics and economics. At Middlebury, she co-founded a local chapter of Amnesty International USA, and after graduating, she received a Harry S. Truman Scholarship. She later completed a master's degree in public policy at Harvard Kennedy School of Government. She has not been lazy. She served as the youngest board member of Amnesty International USA for 6 years and has since been a recipient of several awards, including the United Nations Association of the United States of America Leo Navas Human Rights Youth Award in 2015, the Running Start Rising Political Star, Forbes 30 Under 30, Echoing Green Fellowship, and the 2025 David Prize. She's just unstoppable. She first pitched her idea for a self-defense class taught by women, for women, to her imam at the Queens Community Center when she was only 16. This was after she'd been attacked on the street by a man who tried to take off her headscarf. Although the class was rejected, she continued to pitch the idea, and she held her first class for Women's Initiative for Self-Empowerment, WISE, W-I-S-E, in 2010. Since then, WISE chapters have expanded to other parts of the United States and internationally even, in Edinburgh, Dublin, and Madrid. The program grew to incorporate a summer camp in New York called Menti Muslima. She describes creating WISE as part of her healing process. It evolved into Malika, a global collective of women committed to building security and power for communities. Since the launch, the center has expanded its work to include financial literacy programs, food pantries, boot camps, workshops in public schools, religious institutions, and other community-based organizations. And it launched in 2014. It launched a social media project called Hijabis of New York in order to humanize and diversify the public narratives of Muslim women who wear hijabs. And it's been hosted on Facebook, and it's been widely publicized, and it is quite extraordinary. She also ran for public office, and she's come out with a book this month, for the first time, called Get Home Safe, A Guide to Self-Defense and Building Our Collective Power. Set to release on February 24th, just out. And the work is expected to provide guidance on self-defense and community empowerment, drawing on her experiences as a Muslim woman and self-defense instructor. And it focuses on promoting physical, financial, and political safety for individuals and communities. So we will return with Rana Abdelhamid in just a moment after this next brief message. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Rana Abdelhamid. Marhaba. Welcome to Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's good to have you here, and it's a remarkable book. It's a very good book. Here's the thing about Get Home Safe, which is the title of the book, with a subtitle, A Guide to Self-Defense and Building Our Collective. But it's far more than that. This is the first sort of safety manual, manual, and advice and how-to book that I've encountered that takes on the entire context. It's not just with diagrams and it shows you grab him there and if you push against his nasal cavity, then da 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 dum. It's not that. It has some of that, but it's not that. It is a complete construction of a safe house in all the meanings of that word. It is about financial security and building that. It is about emotional security and building that, and certainly physical safety. But it is psychological. It is quite deep and surprisingly broad. So I congratulate you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And that was the purpose. I mean, when I was writing the book, I really wanted it to be a book that was focused on making sure that it didn't just solve the issue of domestic violence or gendered violence from one angle, but it really looked at safety more holistically based on the work that I've been doing in my community.
Yeah, and it reflects that. It really reflects that. There's a whole. I'm trying to. Oh, here it is. I got many turned down pages and marginalia. It's oh, here's a section. Spend hyper locally. As I've thought more about what makes us truly safe, I've come to realize that every dollar we spend is not just a transaction, but a reflection of our values. It's not about buying things, it's about building something bigger. And then you speak of building relationships in a community with the person who has the small candy shop, with the woman who has the little sandwich shop, with all of these different things, and people whom you've known who didn't just keep the doors open, but by gentrification and selling out, but created models that could afford clothes that they're no longer wearing and swap them for credit and get some cash for something new to them. In other words, building real relationships. That's a very vital part that is often left out of self-defense books. I'm sure you've noticed. And it's a community where people feel safe to maybe ask a neighbor, "Can I leave my kid with you?" Or the neighbor will offer. That's a whole different context. That's lifting self-defense into capital S, capital D. Don't you think?
Yeah, because when I am at the Malika Safety Center, which is the nonprofit organization I run,
Yeah.
oftentimes the number one thing that women will come in there looking for is either direct cash because they're experiencing an economic challenge, an economic crisis, they're experiencing abuse and they can't get out of the situation, or they're looking for a job. And so it would have been not reflective of the reality of our circumstance as women and our understanding of safety if I didn't talk about economics, if I didn't talk about
Of course.
the financial well-being of women. And the model that I discuss is really an alternative to what's at now more mainstream, which is these big box chains. You said the word gentrification, right?
Right.
People disconnected from the small businesses in their communities.
And that's
Small
intentional.
businesses don't exist. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, no, that's intentional and keeps people separate and keeps things divided and keeps it with the status quo. Whereas what you've done is flow over the banks of it, like the Nile, the Nile, and it's a whole different category then. It builds community. and it builds community in a way that women particularly are adept at and understand. So I congratulate you on that too. It's quite remarkable. It's everything from how do we start spending more locally through to um, you know, karate kicks. And and if a woman is really gives herself over or doesn't even let's start more humbly. Let's say she doesn't give herself over to full training. Let's say she does a little bit here and a little bit there. It all mounts up, and it mounts up brilliantly. And it mounts up in the stories that women come back and tell you that they accomplished, um, and in what you yourself have done. Talk to us about the difference between two groups that you founded: the Hijabis of New York, and which is about women in modest dress, and on the other hand, Malika. So what is Malika, and what is Hijabis of New
Yes, of
York?
course. I mean, hijabis of New York started because as a hijab wearing Muslim woman, which means like I cover my hair in my practice, in the practice of my faith, oftentimes I remember like when I was in college or just like in different spaces, people would always react to me differently, especially folks who never really experienced or interacted with Muslim women before. They would have
Mm,
these assumptions and stereotypes about like what it would mean or how I would present or how I would act.
sure.
And it wasn't at all what I who I was in the sense of just being a New Yorker and being from Queens and being an
Yeah.
Egyptian woman and like all the dynamic elements of all those identities.
Mm,
And so I started Hijabis of New York as a storytelling series, which I would basically interview hijab wearing Muslim women and put up their stories online so
uh,
that they can, they can express like why they wear the hijab, like what hijab means to them, and
precisely.
really create like an empowerment circle for other Muslim women to feel
Hmm.
connected to a community so that they're not alone or feeling isolated, but also to break stereotypes about what it is to be a hijab wearing Muslim woman.
Hmm.
And then Melika is a nonprofit organization that I run that is a self defense group, that is a mutual aid group, that runs cultural events and community festivals, that serves Muslim women in New York.
I see.
Um, and we partner with organizations across the city, and we do a lot of different programming to build safety for women and girls across the city.
Mm. And you've been very successful with this, I might add. I mean, not for nothing were you were the youngest member that has ever been on the board of Amnesty International, weren't
Yes, yes. I was
you? Yeah.
also, deeply involved in the human rights world. I think a lot of this work is deeply interconnected.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel really lucky that I got to advocate for many issues, including women's rights issues at a national level, but also at a global level.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, and it shows in the work because very often, well, not very often, less often in fact these days, but for a long time, when women were doubly or triply or quadruply affected by oppression, women would go for the most, how shall I say, evident oppression, and would be forced by reality as well to choose that. Whereas white women, let's say white women who were um, particularly who were Christian, who were um, very sort of white bread kind of person, were apologizing much of the time if they did that. But there's been such a change now, and more and more and more women of color are heading organizations in the women's movement, and I find that an extremely heartening development. It's still not enough, and it's still not. It's still bumpy, if you know what I mean. But it's better than it was, and it's taken us almost 50 years to get it to this stage, which is not an easy stage. But the dedication, and the tolerance for each other, um, has grown, and it is gone into other parts of people's reality and their emotional status, and that I find is maybe the only hope for the earth, because I'm often in a very pretty pretty down attitude these days, given the environment, and given
Mm.
given the wars, and given Trump.
Oh.
Oh my God, this is not how I expected to spend my 80s.
Mm.
So not. But the young, and in particular young women of color, coming more and more and more into power, difficult as that is for them, and painful as it is for them, is such a relief and such a good sign. You know, um, and you do it on every level. You take them, and when they come to you, and you teach them how to fight back. You teach them how to buy properly, not properly, but survival modes, from a fully charged phone that you carry with you, to emergency contacts, to everything, what and you teach them how to ask themselves periodically and regularly questions like, what aspects of my feelings are not being addressed right now? Why am I not comfortable with this man? What is this? What is this situation that I'm involved in that is making me uncomfortable? All those questions, which women in general, no matter which part of the racial divide in this country, or the political divide in this country, they don't ask themselves, because they're taught not to ask themselves. They're taught not to want the answers, and you just breeze through them. It's quite remarkable. Your parents obviously were very special, and raised you to be pretty damn special. So is that where it began?
So kind. So kind. But yeah, my parents are amazing. Both my mom and my dad are really supportive and really involved with the work that I do. I mean, I started organizing when I was a teenager, and when I say that, I think, like, one has to understand that, like, I had the support of my parents and driving me places, helping me print things out, encouraging me when I thought no one would show up.
Hmm.
Um, and so even like the fact that I'm a martial artist and I do karate is because like my mom and dad really pushed for me to learn karate so I can be powerful in my body, so I can be powerful in my voice, so I could defend myself. I also grew up in a home with like really good politics. A lot of people think immigrant older parents and they think they're going to be conservative, especially like Muslim parents.
Oh
And that's
no.
not at all the case with my family. My parents have really good political understanding. They're both uh, very aligned with me, and I've learned so much from them in terms of decolonial politics and in terms of economic justice. And I think I carry that in my work. And so I can talk about them forever because they 100% have taught me so much and have given me so much and are the reason why I'm on this journey today.
Yeah. Well, it's a hell of a journey. I mean, it's it's because it spills over on all sides that it's so valuable. It just refuses to be contained, your journey. And like, for example, there's one chapter called "Changing Systems of Violence Requires," wait for it, joy. I laughed out loud when I read that. And I didn't, and it wasn't from cynicism. It was from understanding that you understand the real need and the purpose of changing systems of violence, because they do involve joy. Um, and that is not replicable by drone kind of one, two, three, four, just uh, you know, repetition, and duty, and feelings of guilt, and feelings of, that's not replicated that way. It's replicated um, by feelings of real delight, and empowerment in what you're doing, and and pleasure. Um, it's you must have a great deal of pleasure in your work, as well as everything else. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, this is why we host festivals and art shows and we have dancing and Zumba and like it you can't create the kinds of relationships where it's like such deep trust over years and years and years and years of doing work, without space for community and connection and joy and culture and love. And that is such an integral part of this. I always ask the question, like, what would the world look like, sound like, feel like, smell like, taste like if we were all safe?
Mhm.
And the reason why I ask that question is because I don't want us to constantly be organizing in reaction to violence without imagining what's on the other side. And I want us to create pockets of the other side, that side of safety here now. And that's why, and that's both going to sustain our ability to do the work, but it's also going to keep us in community with each other, which in itself is the work.
Mhm.
And so I 100% believe, like, we need to be happy, like we need to enjoy this.
Mhm.
And otherwise, like, I would have probably given up a long time ago.
Yeah, well, and it would have been understandable too. You're right. You write this in 2011. Emory University researchers conducted an experiment that helped us to understand the depth of trauma for the first time. And you speak a lot about trauma and being attacked, having been attacked, and what it does to the victim or to the survivor, because it goes to a cellular level.
Mm,
Um, this is what the researchers did. They trained a group of mice to fear the smell of cherry blossoms, by shocking them every time that they introduced the scent. Over time, the mice associated the smell of cherry blossoms with fear and pain, even when they weren't shocked, even when they weren't. Then the mice had babies, and their baby mice also were terrified by the cherry blossom scent, even though they had never expressed the scientific experiment themselves. It took 4 generations for the fear of cherry blossoms to begin to erode, unless international healing interventions were introduced. Now, that's that's pretty astonishing. Um, but it's not, in a way, when we think
mm,
of and when we realize what's been done to women, and what women have had to fight back against, and what women are fighting back against every day, every way. I listen to the news, uh, every day and every night, and it is so difficult not to get psychotically depressed,
yeah.
because of the guy with orange hair who's squatting like a massive bug in our in our Oval Office.
Hmm.
But and everything that he does and everything that he says and is toxic, is just totally toxic. But but the women who are organizing everywhere, despite everything, and in spite of everything, and because of everything, and despite everything, is so it's infinitely touching, and it goes beyond being touching, because I've done a lot of programs on self-defense, and we won prizes for doing these programs, and women really gravitate to them, and they buy the books, and um, they want this information, but it's difficult to convince them that it will bring them joy, and your book does that.
Mm,
And you should be very proud of that, I think, because you write that you've found so much joy in your immigrant community, and of course your immigrant community is one of the immigrant communities that's being vamped on all the time.
hmm.
So there's fewer and fewer input channels for that joy, and every time we insist on them, I think it's an act of affirmation. Um, it's extraordinary. Now, what do you what do you want to be when you acutely grow up? Because you're very young already. But are you going to stay a writer? Are you going to stay doing all of these marvelous things that you do? What's in your future?
I love this question. You're right. I can still grow up. Um, I mean, I've always been a writer and storyteller as part
You're
of
a
my.
good writer. You really are a good
Thank
writer.
you. I appreciate it. As a part of my organizing and activism, and I imagine I'll always write. And I hope to always write, and I hope to always create, and I hope to always be an artist in how I think and vision for a safety for community. But I don't think I'll ever stop being a community organizer either. because I hope to always be connected to a community, and a community here in Queens that I will organize. So I will be teaching self-defense and writing as my future.
Oh, well, this is wonderful. I mean, this is about the best that I could hear, because you're not going to abandon it, and believe me, it won't abandon you. It will, in fact, hound you until you're 85, and and because you have so many aspects of it already on board, as a black belt, as a self-defense instructor, as a as a recognized organizer globally, women will trust you and will want to work with you. And you're like a sort of one woman organizing team. It's not surprising that you received all these awards. What is surprising is that you've kept a sense of humor that is golden. It is just invaluable. Very often, we radicals, and I say we because I've been one quite a while, um, lose our senses of humor, and that's a very hard place to be. That's a hell of a place to be. But there's something very elevating and very treasurable about having it back again, or never having lost it to begin with, which I suspect is your case. Um, because although there's not a lot to laugh about in this world, there is a lot to laugh at, and to change accordingly, and you do all the time, uh, and 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 I find it very interesting also that you haven't been stopped by, well, let's say, by the strictures of what is acceptable politically and what isn't. Do you know what I mean? For
Yes.
example, yeah, you were on the under 30 list of excuse me, the Forbes 30 under 30 list. You were in a New York City Council proclamation. You had the Truman Scholarship. So you're not afraid of being accepted, um, by those who have power and are willing to share it. And you will use that. And the same with Amnesty International. But many people get attacks of permanent purism. And I've been guilty of this in time myself at times, so that they are too pure to meddle, in the gutter. And sometimes you got to get in the gutter, uh, and that you're doing everything through self defense, education, financial literacy, and mental health resources is just incredibly admirable. Um, so the book is called "Get Home Safe," which is such a familiar phrase. Get Home Safe, a guide to self-defense and building our collective power. Yeah. Um, and um, and it's for all women of gender-based violence, to be able to defend ourselves and to build collective safety. But I think the important thing, the interesting thing about an additional interesting thing about this book is that because it is primarily aimed for Muslim women, it gives a Western reader, I'm saying Western in that general sense, a Western reader, a window into what it is that Muslim women endure on a daily basis, which they don't always have. Um, and that in itself is a valuable experience, hugely valuable, because they will be turning pages and saying, oh my God, oh, they did that to her. Oh, oh, and that's invaluable. It's so important. So I thank you for that. Um, and uh, and I know it'll be on the shelves of many women. The people who listen to this program in 110 countries often listen with, I like to say, with a pencil in one hand to write down things and know
I love that. I love that.
where to order the book and so forth. So you're gonna tour on the book. You're gonna go around in places and talk to
Yeah,
people.
there's upcoming events here in New York, and if anyone's interested, I'm
Mm-hmm.
open to do more talks. So
Talk about. Do you have
excited.
a website? Does Malika have a website, or does
Yes,
she?
Malika has a website. It's just malika.org, malikah.org. And my website is just rana.nyc, rana.nyc.
Okay. All right, I'm writing these down as well. Well, you're a dream of a Muslim organizer, of a woman organizer, of a great organizer, period. So I thank you. And I thank you so much for being with us on Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you so much for having me.
We have to take a short pause here, but I'll return in just a moment with some more, spring thoughts. See you soon. The Women's Media Center, founded in 2005 by Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and myself, is a progressive, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make women visible and powerful in media. You can learn more about the WMC at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Back from the edge of extinction, a new study on teaching disappearing song to birds. Now, the regent honeyeater, they were once abundant in the forests of southeastern Australia, congregating in enormous eye-catching flocks. But today, the black and yellow songbirds are critically endangered, with just a few hundred remaining in the wild. As the birds disappeared from the landscape, so did their distinctive song, a soft, warbling melody that males use to defend territory and attract mates. Instead, some young males adopted the songs of entirely different species. Others produced shorter, simpler versions of the standard song. Honey-eaters born in zoos, as part of a captive breeding program, didn't learn the tune at all. Now, scientists are restoring the song by deploying a few skilled honey-eaters to act as vocal tutors. Researchers found that regent honey-eaters that knew the standard song successfully taught it to the young, captive-born birds before they were released into the wild. Some of these avian students even learned the song well enough to teach it to the next generation. That's what the researchers wrote in scientific reports. Although more research is required, the scientists hope that the tutoring program, which is ongoing, might help boost reproductive rates in the wild and perhaps get the world's last remaining honey-eaters all singing the same tune again. The traditional song has some sort of intrinsic value to it, but it's also really important for the birds to have a stable song, said Daniel Appleby, a conservation biologist at Australian National University and an author of a new study on the honeybird. The song is critical to their reproduction. The study also reflects a growing understanding of the importance of animal culture and a recognition that successful conservation programs may need to find ways to preserve socially learned behaviors like birdsong. As captive breeding for conservation and reintroduction is increasingly relied on for the survival of species, we really do need to consider culture, Dr. Appleby said. The regent honey-eater population dropped sharply over the 20th century as the birds' woodland habitats were cleared. Today, scientists estimate roughly 250 wild birds live in the fragmented forests of southeastern Australia, spread across an area about the size of Spain. So, studying them is a nightmare, as you can imagine, said Dr. Appleby, who is part of a research lab aptly named the Difficult Bird Research Group. This low population density may also explain why the honey-eater song began to change, because young birds typically learn the tune by listening to and observing adult males. But fewer birds on the landscape meant fewer learning opportunities. A parallel program emerged in the captive breeding program, where young birds often had little exposure to adult males during their critical song learning period. When these zoo-born birds were released into the wild, they sang, quote, strange, rudimentary songs, Dr. Appleby said, and relatively few managed to find mates. So Appleby and his colleagues decided to try teaching the wild songs to the captive-born birds at the Taronga Zoo and Taronga Western Plains Zoo, and over several years experimented with a variety of strategies. They housed young birds, some of them anyway, in aviaries with speakers which played recordings of the wild song from sunrise to sunset. That just completely failed, Dr. Appleby said. We didn't notice any difference in the birds. But other young birds got real-life tutors. 2 wild-born males who sang the traditional honey-eater song. When the young chicks lived alongside these tutors, first in a neighboring aviary and then in a shared one, they began to sing their tune. 3 months in, we started hearing our first little renditions of a traditional wild song, Dr. Appleby said. To get good results, the scientists found they had to keep class sizes small, with no more than 5 avian pupils per tutor. In these small groups, though, many tutored birds produced songs that were essentially indistinguishable from the traditional wild song. And that's our show for this week. You can follow me on social media at The Robin Morgan. You can check out my blog at robinmorgan.net, and you can find my new novel, Parallax, and my just-out new book of poems, Harvesting Darkness, wherever books are sold. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Views expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. Executive producer, as well as founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer for this program, Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us next time on Women's Media Center Live.